Hey there, super friends. This is Joey with Last Point Gaming. Today is Thursday, January 11th, 2018. If you want to connect with us on social media, you can friend up our Last Point Gaming Facebook account. You can follow us on Twitter at Last Point Gaming. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Stranger Sparrow. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can always reach out directly with an email to lastpointgaming@gmail.com. God damn it. YouTube channel, of course, is also named Last Point Gaming. Just look for our logo, which is the little heart with the -1 in it, until I change it. But for now, that's what it is. So, I didn't really get a chance to refresh over the release notes before I left. Sadly. Still don't really want to go over like the cards in the set because again, I don't have, a visual in front of me to reference, so you're gonna deal with me fumbling over card names like, Bob Light and that kind of thing. And I think Taryn's done an awesome job with the set. I agree with most of what he's said. Though, that's another exciting point. Shout out to MTGO Traders. So, Epic Stream featured Taryn's video on the 5 reasons that energy needs to be addressed in Standard. And so that video's gotten a bunch of traction, which is great. I love that content creation team, really. I know I talk mostly about Taryn because he's the one I follow the closest at this point. But, my interactions with Jolt were always great, too. And, as far as their finance guy, I don't watch his stuff. But I think he must be a great guy, too, because they're all just such happy, fun, positive people. It's even kind of funny for a rant video. Somebody needs to teach Taryn how to properly rant. Or just allow him to continue to be a nice, well-spoken person and not resort to, talking like a sailor. Because as far as rant videos go, it's still very high-minded. I don't know if that's the right word there. It's still very calm and very these are the problems I see, and this is the situation as I see it. So, it's great. If you haven't checked out that video yet, go check it out. He makes very compelling arguments, and again, I'm pretty much in agreement with his points that short of doing some sort of major errata to energy that makes it function in a completely different way than it's printed on the cards, the only other real answer is a ban. Todd Anderson also did an article on his predictions for what's going to happen with the ban list. And it's like 5 scenarios he's seeing as possible. Where he goes more into detail about why, this combination of cards being banned is either more or less likely than any of the other combinations, and why it needs to be the combination and not just one or the other. But again, Todd Anderson is a premium Star City Games writer, so I feel like if I talk too much about the article he wrote, that's in some way stealing revenue from them, and I feel kind of icky doing it. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to get very in-depth there. If you would like to know more, please go check out his article on StarCityGames.com under the premium section. It was posted today. So, what else did I do today? I watched Seth from MTG Goldfish, probably better known as Saffron Olive, his deck tech on, he called it Infinite Vampires. It's not Infinite Vampires, it's Infinite Life Drain. It is a jank-tastic combo, it really is. It requires 4 cards. So, keep that in mind. This deck is not likely to be winning any GPs, but it does look fun as hell. If you're a play for the joy of the game kind of person, especially like at your kitchen table, or if you have a less competitive F&M format, I recommend giving it a shot because it looks adorable. I really hope to see him stream it because, you know, even though that would be one of those videos I'd have to actually like sit and watch. I can't just listen to him stream. And again, it's because of the cadence he speaks in. It's very distracting to me, so then I just don't do anything well. But I would totally devote an hour of my life or more to directly watching him stream that because it just sounds like so much fun if you can get it to work. And again, I'm not, let's see here. It's Bantu's Monument, Oathsworn Vampire, Pitiless Plunderer. That's 3 of the 5, and then like Yeheni. So the concept is, and again, you can go check out Seth's video, and of course he explains things much better than I'm going to here, and he's actually sure about the card names. So Bantu's Monument, black creatures cost 1 less to cast. It's the black version of a Ketra's Monument, except instead of getting warriors, you get, when a creature enters the battlefield under your control, or no, when you cast a creature spell, because that's kind of important distinction. You drain for 1, which means you gain 1 life and your opponent loses 1 life. So Oathsworn Vampire can be cast from the graveyard if you gain life this turn. Pitiless Plunderer is needed because when a creature you control dies, you get a treasure. And of course, Oathsworn Vampire with Bantu's Monument will only cost 1 black to cast. Because he's like, I don't know, 1/1 or a 2/2. I think he's a 2/2 for 2. With the cast from the graveyard if you gain life this turn. Like, I think he's going to be solid in any vampire build. Because so many of the vampire, like the tokens and everything, have lifelink. That meeting his condition for graveyard recursion is going to be pretty easy. And then you need Yeheni as like a sack outlet. So basically what you do if none of these things are answered, which again, that's what makes it a little loose. 2-card combos are hard enough to pull off. 4-card combos, it's a lot of moving pieces to get all in the right place at the right time. And because you're going to have to play them out over multiple turns, it's going to give your opponent plenty of chance to disrupt it. So, Yeheni has the sack ability, sack a creature you control. Well, sack a creature, you have to control it to sack it. And he gains indestructible until end of turn. Now, while multiple instances of indestructible are in fact redundant and they don't do anything past the first one, there's no rule saying that you can't give the same permanent indestructible multiple times. This is something I used to do with Butcher of the Horde. Is that what it was called? It was the red, black, white flying. Well, I don't know if he actually flew on his own. Wow, douchebag. Or if he had to sack something to give him flying. But you could sack creatures to him to give him like haste, flying, trample, and lifelink, I think. So all of these abilities, when stacked with multiple instances, like if you have 2 instances of life gain on the same creature, you don't gain double the life. When it deals damage, you gain life equal to that damage. Like, period. So even having 3 or 4 instances of lifelink on the same creature doesn't provide any additional benefit. However, there's nothing stating that you couldn't just keep sacking shit to him to give him the same keywords over and over again, even though they were redundant. So the plan was that with Dictate of Erebos, which is every time a creature I control dies, my opponent has to sack a creature. And so the goal was to get them both out at the same time, plus a bunch of, like, crappy tokens, and keep sacking to butcher the horde until their battlefield was cleared. So, it's the same kind of concept here with Yahenni. You sack a creature to give him indestructible until end of turn. I had a rogue ash fly, and just making sure my pants aren't on fire. Because I'm not lying, so they shouldn't be on fire, right? So yeah, you play the Oathsworn Vampire, or you have the Oathsworn Vampire, you have the Pitiless Plunderer, so that when you sack the Oathsworn Vampire to Yahenni, you get a treasure token, which you gain life because a creature you controlled entered the battlefield. Well, yeah, of course you have to play a creature, which, I mean, theoretically the last piece of the combo you play is Yahenni. Or the Pitiless Plunderer, you know, whatever. Doesn't really matter. But as long as you had a creature enter the battlefield that turn, you gained a life from it entering the battlefield. So that turns on the ability to cast the Oathsworn Vampire from the graveyard. Then again, the treasure token from the Pitiless Plunderer. Wow. That name's awful, Watsy. Why'd you do that to me? The treasure token is sufficient to cast the Oathsworn Vampire from the graveyard, because with the monument, his casting cost is reduced by 1. And you just drain him out. Because you can do this 20 times as long as you have all the pieces and they cannot disrupt it. So yeah, that's it. Again, it's a super janky combo. It's probably not going to be terribly consistent, but I think it looks fun as hell. What other stuff did I see pop up today? Not much. I really want to see somebody do a black-white vampires build, because I suck at brewing. I started compiling the list of, like, potential black-white vampires, and I was, like, looking heavily at Aketra's Monument and Bantu's Monument. Like, well, either one of them is okay, but I definitely don't want to play both. So seeing if I could cheese it out, kind of like the original blue-white Aketra's Monument deck was, where it was pretty much mono-white, except you had a blue splash for a couple creatures that cost both white and blue, so they counted as white creatures. Spell Queller and Cloud Blazer, if I recall correctly. And you also had the blue splash for, like, Metallurgic something. The counter spell that you can tap artifacts to improvise the cost. Metallurgic Rebuke, maybe? Something like that. Because, of course, you had the Bygone Bishop, which meant you got clue tokens for pretty much everything you played. So you just had a bunch of clue tokens to use for your improvised cost on the counterspell. So it essentially costs 1. Your Spell Quellers only cost 2. It's a great deck. So I wanted to see if there was a way I could kind of cheese it out like that, but I think you really, to build an effective vampire deck, you're going to have to go solid black-white. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't play with the monuments, because while they only reduce the casting cost of 1 color, their creature cast trigger is any creature. It doesn't have to be just, you know, white creatures or just black creatures. So depending on which way you want to go, like, Bantu's Monument's actually looking pretty good. Because, like, there's the guy who, when he enters the battlefield, he drains for 1. There's the one that when he attacks, he drains for 1. My favorite is, of course, the Brutal Horde Chief Vampire. That whenever you attack with a vampire, drain for 1. So, well, whenever a vampire you control attacks. So you get it for each attacking creature you have. Yeah, that's nice. I kind of want to dig out my old Black-White Warriors list and see if I can use, like, the cost setup in that and pretty much reproduce it with the Black-White Vampires build. You know, just straight out exchanges for casting costs. The nice thing about this one is, well, yeah, no, it's definitely a nice thing. Back in the days of the Warriors, you had Chief of the Scale and Chief of the Edge. That was 8 of your card slots, though many people did not value Chief of the Scale. I did, though. And Chief of the Scale was other warriors you control get +0/+1. Chief of the Edge was other warriors you control get +1/+0. So together, they made one of these vampires for the same casting cost. I don't remember what the hell the... Legion Lieutenant, actually, I think. I think that is the name of it. 1 black, 1 white for 2/2. He's either a 2/2 or a 1/1. I don't recall. See, this is why you need to go watch Terran's videos, because, like, I don't have this stuff in front of me. But other vampires you control get +1/+1. So he's both of those chiefs in one convenient card. And of course in multiples it's great because they'll buff each other, even though it doesn't buff itself. But the Black-White Warriors build was really great and really low to the ground. But I seem to recall it also had like 12 1-drops in it. And I don't know that there's 12 good 1-drop vampires. I don't know though. I have to take a look. Because if I can essentially use the math from that list and do the same thing with the vampires, I feel like that is going to be the closest I will ever get to successfully brewing a list on my own. And it's not even really on my own. It's using a template, essentially. But I suck at brewing. I am just fucking awful at it. There's something about... Because in the end, deck brewing comes down to a lot of math, and there's something about the math I don't get. Now, it does suck that you still don't have a card like Athreos. Where you can get your shit back. So that's a limitation. But I think vampires could be pretty solid if you exclude energy from the format, because energy just warps the format. Just awful. And even against energy, if you build something fast enough, you might be okay. But you gotta be really fast and low to the ground, which means you're soft against a lot of other decks. So I don't know. I want to take a look at it. I'm hoping a list pops up here soon. There's a lot of things I'm looking at because I'm really just tired of playing Rambient Red. I never really loved the list. I didn't hate it. It was okay. It was kind of fun, but it was more fun because I won with it than it was, fun in its own right. And usually I don't play decks like that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of ready for something new. I'm really just ready for something new in the format. Simic Merfolk also looking very solid. Because before, Simic Merfolk was so close to being good. Just in what you had available from Ixalan and, a couple augment spells from sets before Ixalan, but it was mostly based on cards in Ixalan. Obviously, as there were no merfolk in any of the other sets in Standard. And it just wasn't quite there. It was close, but just couldn't quite get there. So now with the addition of the Merfolk Lord, I definitely don't know what that one's called, but it's basically the vampire, except it costs a green and a blue to cast, and it's Merfolk. Plus... Silvergill Adept's good. Plus, the double Explorer creature. Was it Jade Light Ranger? Which, if you go read the release notes, the release note on that one's pretty funny. And I'll share with you. And it's talking about the double Explore trigger. Where, if you reveal a land, you put it in your hand. For the first Explore trigger. And then the second card, of course, will be different. If you reveal a non-land on the first Explore trigger and decide to keep it on top, you would reveal the same card. So you go through the motions again, but you know what's on top, your opponent knows what's on top. And like the release notice like goes into that, how you can reveal the same card twice, that's fine. And it like has a note in it that's like, but if you don't act surprised the second time, Jade Light Ranger will be sad. I'm like, wow, it is almost like programmers wrote these release notes. That was the only thing I liked about the Teach Yourself PHP book that my instructor assigned back when I was in college and took PHP for a semester. Is the book had a lot of typos. The worst part is it had a lot of typos in the code examples, so I guess it did help you learn PHP really well because you had to figure out what was wrong with the code you were given. But it was full of just all sorts of stupid, punny programmer humor. There was a weird sound. I don't think it was my car. So, I think Merfolk's going to be very solid. But again, a lot of these things, whether it's going to be able to take on energy is kind of a big question mark, especially if they don't do anything to nerf energy. And I'm generally not about standard bans. Especially a deck that's been around as long as energy has. Just because a lot of people have had an opportunity to dump money into that deck. And that deck is friggin' expensive. And like decks like Blue-Black Control, as far as my recollection of the cards in this set, they didn't really get very many tools. So everybody that's dropped a bunch of cash on a Scarab God, if they say ban Aether Hub and or Attune with Aether, making it harder to play the 4-color variant, you still have the option of going Sultai to make your Scarab Gods work and going a little bit more mid-range than the traditional Sultai build. But Scarab Gods are like $50, man. Anybody who like was holding out and then just finally accepted their fate that if they want to play to win, they got to play energy, and within the last couple months dumped the money on it, they're going to be pissed. It's the same thing. I've seen people go off when modern bans are announced because, it's like, I just finished acquiring all the cards I needed for that deck. Because that's one of the arguments when people say that modern's too expensive is, well, but you get to play the same deck for eons. It's not like standard where you have to get new cards every 6 to 9 months. You get to just kind of keep playing the deck for years. So you can take the time to acquire the cards. You can start with kind of a lower power build. Go hit some F&Ms up, accrue some store credit, replace your less good cards with better cards. It can be a kind of labor of love, a passion project, a work in progress. And then when you finally finish it, there you go, and you don't really have to worry about rotation, just destroying it. What you do have to worry about, though, is bans. When I was looking for a modern deck to build to go down to the Open in Baltimore, a friend of mine was really all about me building. Now, he was really into the Jund Death Shadows list over the Grixis version. And was like, yeah, you should totally build this. Oh my god, dude, do you not understand lanes? So he was really into the Jund list, but, Grixis Death Shadow was top in the format for so long that, I was like, well, what happens when something gets banned? Though, to be fair, when it comes to Death Shadow deck, you don't really have to worry about that. Simply because it's really hot in my car. If you're playing the Jund variant and Death Shadow gets banned, you just go back to Jund good stuff. If you're playing the Grixis variant and Death Shadow gets banned, you just go back to Grixis Delver. The deck lists are near identical. Also, Death Shadow in and of itself is not that expensive a card. Like, the pieces that are very expensive are the ones that are the same between the two color variants. Like, the pieces you're going to pay money for Jund Death Shadow are the same pieces you're going to pay for just generic Jund good stuff. So, but I mean, I worry about buying into too high-end a deck because, or not high-end, but a deck that's too good. Because once the format starts getting stale and they see tournament attendance dropping and people just like, fuck this format, they ban shit. Like, you saw it more when they were trying to do the Modern Pro Tours, and I understand the logic behind doing Modern Pro Tours. It is a very popular format with the competitive players because you have so much longer an opportunity to learn your deck in and out, to acquire the pieces you need. But Modern doesn't change much. It's a wheel that just kind of keeps ticking a little bit. So it makes for boring TV. Unless they shake it up by banning shit. Now, don't get me wrong, with the Eldrazi winter shit, something needed to be banned because that deck was incredibly oppressive and completely format warping. But, like, did Splinter Twin really need to be banned? I don't know. I really wasn't in the Modern scene at that point. Did Birthing Pod really need to be banned? Did the amulet from Amulet Bloom, I don't remember what the hell that thing was called, Quicksilver Amulet maybe? No, that doesn't sound right. I think Quicksilver Amulet's actually like a really bad card. There was the amulet that permanents that would enter the battlefield tapped enter untapped instead. So you like played massive ramp because the rampy lands all enter the battlefield tapped. So they banned Amulet. Again, I wasn't really paying any attention to Modern when these things happened. I just know how, like, the groups I was in kind of erupted over the bannings. Like, did Git Probe really need to be banned? I don't know. I don't think Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time needed to be banned when they were banned. Treasure Cruise I can see because it was very easily splashable. Dig, yeah, you need 2 blue for that. But, in any case, you know, bans suck, and they're going to upset somebody, but you gotta kind of look at the break-even analysis on this one. Like, how many players are you hemorrhaging from the standard format because you just get fucking bored playing against Teamer Energy? More so, you get bored losing to Teamer Energy, and it's stifling creativity with, you know, like, Ixalan barely touched the standard format. It had more of an impact on Modern than it did standard. So, why is this? Because Kaladesh was so format warping. So, you know, yeah, you're going to cheese off players that are playing Teamer Energy because they sunk all this money into this really expensive deck because it was in high demand, because it wins. But if you don't do something about it, you're going to continue to discourage players in Standard that aren't into buying Teamer Energy. So, like, where are you losing less people is what it comes down to. It's the Fight Club equation. If you don't understand that reference, you're probably too young to be listening to this podcast. Wow. Yeah, that thought's a scary one to me. Anyway, so I'm really on the fence about it. Like, yeah, something needs to be done. Like, I would like to see something done, I guess is the way I should put it. But Standards already had so many bannings in the last standard format. If we now need to have more bannings since rotation happened, I think it's a big hit to consumer confidence. So, I don't know. But I'm home now. Hopefully I'll actually get to look through the release notes tomorrow and get to talk about that kind of stuff like I planned on. But either way, as always, if you made it this far with me, thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to y'all later.